Good morning, everybody. Today we are going to discuss about the examination of the patient and especially the homeopathic examination of the patient. This examination of the patient is very well known as case taking or case receiving. In homeopathy, the examination of the patient is far more important than any other system of medicine because we have certain aims and objects to fulfill with the help of examination of the patient. What are these aims are? To know the person, to understand the person, to understand the disease, to understand the disease process, to understand how disease has evolved in this particular kind of person and why this person has become ill. This all can be fulfilled with the due respect to the examination of the patient. And that is what our primary interest is. And secondarily, we are interested in finding out the simillimum. And at the same time, we know that each case is new in homeopathic examination. We cannot refer our past experience with the present. We cannot judge the present case with the reference to our past experience with the various kind of cases. And Dr. Hahnemann himself has suggested that certain kind of qualities are required in the physician to make an examination of the patient. And what are these qualities are? The qualities are: the physician must possess the sound senses. Why he should have sound senses? Because our five senses, which are the tool to perceive the person in front of us. And the more important is the understanding, or what we call common sense. This all senses should be sound enough to perceive the personal qualities of the person who is in front of us. At the same time, the physician should be attentive in observing. Attentive in observing means he should be alert enough what is happening with the case during case taking when the physician asks question to the patient. At the same time, while we are interrogating his relative, at that time also we should be alert enough and attentive enough what they are indicating and what their facial expressions are indicating. The third quality, that is fidelity in tracing the picture of the disease. That is what? The honesty in tracing the picture of the disease. Whenever we make the picture of the disease or the details of the disease, we should be honest enough not to put our own ideas or our own terminologies in the case paper, but what the patient is saying, what his relatives are saying, that we should put into the paper. And that is what the fidelity in tracing the picture of the disease. And above all, freedom from the prejudice. The patient may be our relative is. And if we judge our patient from our past experience, because he is our relative, we know many things about him and we have particular kind of experience with such kind of patient, but still we should keep ourselves above our experiences and we should be free from the prejudices. At the same time, there are many theories we know, but there are still many theories we don't know or we not aware of, and that we should conceive in our mind, that whatever is happening, that is happening, and we should note down the happening, what is happening in front of us. And that is what the freedom from prejudice, to be in the present only. We are not traveling ourselves into the past or we are not traveling into the future. And that is what the freedom from prejudice, that we are judging the patient who is in front of us at a present moment only. No doubt we can think of the past and we can think of the future afterwards. But while case taking, we should be in the present. It is always better to tell patient in requesting tone that speak slowly, because if our patient speaks slowly and precisely, we can note down each and everything very precisely. It helps us in many ways while we are forming the image of the illness. And that is why it is always better or to take care of the patient and request them to speak slowly in the beginning of the case taking procedure. Secondly, the most important thing in getting the image of the sickness is to preserve in simplicity what the patient tells us in his own word. It is always better whatever patient tell, we have to write down. He may tell us in a different language also, and if we are knowing that language, we can write down in that particular expression which is used by the patient. So while interpreting the data or interpreting the data of that particular patient, we can recall the whole expression of the patient. That is why the patient's expressions are the most important in the case. And if a physician write down all the expression in the particular language, in a particular tone, in a particular expression with all the characteristic, that is the most important in a case taking. When physician asks the patient about his complaint, the patient starts narrating his complaint. Sometimes the relatives who are attending with the patients are also start with the patient. In my experience, most of the time, whenever patients come with their relatives, they start narrating the complaint with the patient. So it is better to plan to meet the patient separately first, and then we can ask the relative of the patient. Because when heard the patient and his complaint and all his sufferings, then while asking the relative of the patient, we can confirm so many other data regarding his behavior, regarding his complaint, regarding his mode of complaint and onset of the complaint. This all can be gathered from the attendant of the patient also. And the most important thing, that what kind of alteration they have noticed in the patient, because they are the people who are with the patient before he was ill, so they can notice the change in the behavior of the patient very accurately. Here the patient is also narrating in complaint, his complaint, and the attendants are also narrating the complaints. But what about the physician? During the whole period of the time, the physician sees, hears, and perceives with his other senses that what there is of an altered or unusual character about the patient. What kind of change he is perceiving in that particular person. And if he knows the normal human being, he can perceive the change in a patient. So what we have learnt in anatomy and what we have learned in physiology, that is normal. And now what we are facing, that is all the abnormal sign and symptom. This abnormal sign and symptoms are the alteration in the state of health, and that we have to note down. So during the whole period of time of the case taking, physician is mainly concentrating upon the alteration which is available in the patient. An attentive physician is an asset, because attention with skilled listening is the best tool to practice the art of medicine. Very few people can listen with attention, and especially when there are so many of non-verbal communications, the attention is the best instrument to adapt. Only listening will not help here. The attention with the eyes, the attention with the nose, the attention with the feeling, this all are the most important when there are exchange of the non-verbal communications, because expert says that 75 of the communication is in the mode of non-verbal communications. Many time in the class a teacher can perceive the non-verbal communication between so many boys and so many girls, but here he don't have to give head to it this kind of gestures, because it is not the part of case taking. But when we are taking a case, we must note down all the non-verbal communications very precisely, because they are the our perceptions, and we have to rely upon our perception with fidelity in the tracing out the picture of the disease. Here the physician is perceiving through all his senses. He writes all the words, all the sentences in the language of the patient. He is using the same words, he is using the same sentence, he is using almost the same language which the patient has spoken or his relative has spoken. And he permits the patient or the attendant to speak continuously, even to the end, without any kind of interruption. And physician has to make only interruption when the patient or relative wander off from the actual subject. They don't have to interrupt here and there. But the physician, a wise physician, will only interrupt when the patient or the attendant wander off from the actual complaint. And then he put them to the subject with the minimum efforts. Or sometimes a skilled physician can do the same thing with only the gesture. A wise physician always let the patient to tell his own story in his own word, and he only makes certain correction in the grammatical form of the story of the patient to preserve the record in a better manner. He always tries to let the patient speak without any kind of interruption, as if the patient speaks continually or continuously, then and then only we can get the pure image of the illness of the patient. Physician will not put any synonym to the case, and even if he use synonym, he always try to use synonym as far as to the original expression of the patient. And that is how we can use the synonym of menses instead of show or instead of monthly periods. We can use the synonym that is menses. There are so many other synonyms which we can use for the expression of the patient to present in a better manner. While using the synonym, we should be careful enough not to break the chain of thought or the actual expression of the patient while using the synonym. Rather, we should use only those synonyms which can express the thought process or the complaint or the expression of the patient in a most easier manner. That kind of synonyms we can use while recording the case. After the patient has described its sufferings in his own way and the physician has gone through all the signs and symptoms which has been described by the patient, now he is able to formulate certain ideas and concepts regarding the patient and his suffering. And this is the time to make inquiry with the attendants or the relative of the patients, because now the physician has certain ideas and concepts regarding the patient and his sufferings. So now he can verify those ideas and verify those concepts regarding the patient with the attendant, and the same way without asking any kind of direct or leading questions to the attendants, but whatever they say they are more important. Whenever a attendant or whenever a relative tells something spontaneously regarding the patient, it is one of the most important symptom in our case record. While talking with the relatives of the patient, we should be enough cautious that we should not over guided by the information supplied by the relative of the patient, because many a times an over anxious mother always exaggerate the complaints of her child, or a dominant mother will not reveal the weaknesses of her young daughter, or a over anxious wife will always exaggerate the complaints of the husband. And many a times many relatives are imposing their own notions and fears while talking about the patient to the physician. So it is important to have statement from one who is disinterested. Disinterested is not like that the person is not having any connection with the patient and he is talking about the patient, but who is comparatively not over anxious or over caring or over powerful. The person who is analyze the patient in a stable manner, that do we mean by the little bit disinterested. It has been the study for hundreds of years to find the best way to question witnesses in the court, and as a result, they have settled upon certain rules for obtaining the evidences of the case. In the court, there are certain rules and regulations to ask any questions to any person. Otherwise, a common sentence we can hear that objection overruled or objection sustained. The same way in homeopathy also has rules for examining the case that must be followed. If we neglect to make a careful examination of the patient will be the first sufferer. But after some time or after some period of time, we also will suffer that we have not done the proper examination of the case. That is why the patient is suffering. And ultimately, the whole system of homeopathy will suffer that this system is not able to cure particular kind of diseases. Actually, these are the failures of the homeopaths, and these are not the failures of the system. But because the homeopaths has made mistakes in the examination of the case, they are not succeeded in the certain kind of cases, and such kind of cases are reported as a failure of the system. So that we should prevent. And the questions which has been suggested by Dr. Hahnemann in the Organon of Medicines are only suggestive of what you should ask. He has not imposed anything that you should ask this and this and this only. But these are the general direction that he has provided us to guide us, that we can ask certain kind of question at a certain juncture of the time. While examining a case, listen carefully the patient first, then the friends or relatives or attendants, or while examining the case and the attendants, we have to make our own observations. And if we do not obtain any kind of enough data to prescribe upon, we have to rely upon the particulars of the case. When we are talking about the particulars, we should know about the generals of the case. What can be considered as the generals of the case? Starting from the appetite, thirst, sleep, urine, stool, sexual function, perspiration, and the mental qualities, this all comes under the general symptoms. In females, the menstrual discharge also comes under the general symptom of the particular person. And the particulars are related with the parts. And mainly we can directly link it with the chief complaint. These are known as the particular of the case. And there are still other data which is considered to be the common data of the patient, which is diagnostic value only. And after much experience, you will become expert in questioning the patient so as to bring out the truth. So while doing the examining the general data, examining the particular data, and the examining the common data, it is our main try to bring out the truth behind the illness of the patient, why he has became ill. And that is what the main concern of a physician is, that to restore him to the previously healthy state. During case taking, We must put ourselves on a level with the form of speech our patient use, the way of pronouncing the word, the words the patient is using, the tone of voice, the modulation of the voice, and the particular kind of language. We have to listen very carefully and noting down all the characteristic of the patient's language. But at the same time, we should remain cautious that we don't have to put any word into the patient's mouth or become biased by his expressions. It is true that we want to know all the particulars, but one caution is there without asking it directly. We should not ask any direct question while taking a case or while asking about the particulars. If the particulars reveal spontaneously, it always of a higher value. If you ask a direct question, you must not put the symptom in the record, because most of the time the patient will answer in yes or no. And if the patient's answer is yes or no, it is sure that your question is badly formed or badly framed. If a question brings no answer, let it alone. Either the patient is not knowing the answer, or he has not noticed, or sometimes he don't want to answer this type of questions. That is why we have to let it alone, or let this question alone, and proceed to the further. And always remember while case taking that what we ask is not that much important, but what patients answer or patient reveal or patient say is the most important during the case taking. Generally, the questions giving a choice of answer are known to be the defective one. But one can ask the multiple choice question when asking a question. Whether you prefer sweet, sour, spicy, bitter, salty, which kind of taste do you prefer? This way we can ask the questions. But we cannot say that whether you prefer sweet or salty, sour or bitter, spicy or sweet. The patient will always answer that this or this. And these are not the actual expression of the patient. But if we give a multiple choice question, then one can answer according to their priorities and their preferences. And whenever they complain about their suffering, try to ascertain the precise part, the location of the body where the sensation is felt, and always try to characterize that particular kind of sensation or feeling. This always help in completing a symptom. And in investigating a case, there are many things to learn. The onset of the attack, the length of the attack, the appearance of the discharge, the character of the discharge, the time of the day, when it is more and when it is less. And such kind of questioning are always make a student a perfect learner. Every student should go over these questions framing and collateral questions, and they always has to try for case taking of different patients. But do remember that leave the patient in freedom always. We should not impose anything on our patients. We should not tell anything our patient that you do in this and this and this way only. Because if we impose anything or we suggest anything, that will be of ours only. It is not of the patient. And in case taking, we always need the patient's expression, not of the physician. Give enough time to your patients. Whenever patient is replying in the case taking, we should give enough time to each and every patient, because many a times it has been observed that patient develop a pause. At the same time, many physicians do believe in giving pause while asking the questions. The pause always indicate either the patient is thinking or recalling or recollecting, synthesizing the memory data, or is deciding whether to tell such kind of truth to the physician or not. That is why if we give a proper pause at a proper time for proper length of the time, it has useful value. And during case taking, we should not adopt a fixed style of asking the question, because this will remain with us. Every time in every case we will do the same thing monotonously. And the case taking is the sharpest kind of work that you can keep your reputation and fulfill your highest purpose of your life. That is what the mission of the physician through the case taking. And that is why in case taking, first of all, the physician should be at ease and should have the proper time, and he should allow this proper time to his each and every patient so that they can reveal what they are suffering from. During case taking, we should develop silence with attention as far as possible, and keep the patient talking about his complaint and keep him talking close to the line or close to his own complaint. He should not wander off from his sufferings. And if he will talk more and more, we can find out the symptoms in general and particular. But if the patient goes off or wander off from his own complaint, it is the duty of the physician to bring him back to the line quietly and without disturbing him. Many physicians can do the same thing just with the help of gestures only. Or many physicians may get angry with such kind of behavior also. But what should be the state of the physician while case taking? That we have to understand. Because a calm and a wise physician will always bring back the patient to the complaints in a easiest and the simplest manner.